socio-cultural, technological need of the country. And there is no shortage of bad stories about education. In fact, there is actually no good story about any education process in India today. And not surprising, it's all man-made. So I'll focus on that because all of us are really involved in this education process. Okay. Since it's an online session, I will do for about an hour, and then we will have questions on that, discussion items, followed by more specific aspects of education alone. Okay. So the outline of my talk is as follows. We'll look at recent experiences, both personal and what we get in the media. We'll get an idea of what disaster really is in terms of ideas and perception, the consequences and mitigation of this disaster. More importantly, how does one prepare for any eventuality that may happen? We have to be very clear about distinction between natural and man-made, and distinction between natural and man-made appearing natural. We will have special focus on man-made disasters, special focus on education, disaster in education and learning, and a possible way ahead. Most of the time, mitigation is at best not necessarily a complete revival. So you would have seen all this in the media now, just about a month back. Okay. This is in the richest part of the world. Okay. And it's in Los Angeles, and you can see the night image here, fully lit up city, and portions of it, and even some portions about to get burnt out, and fairly large. It's an hilly region, which also includes the most, you can see here, Hollywood Hills, Beverly Hills. This is the place where the richest of the Hollywood people also live. And this appears to be a natural disaster. Please, please, no talking. No background talking, please. So the question is, this is more natural, but there is significant amount of man-made component here. For example, when they tried using the water in the pipeline to extinguish the fire, first thing, there was no pressure in the water enough to, forcefully feed the, extinguish the fire. Secondly, after some time, the water ran out at many hydrants. So it obviously means that there was very little preparedness for such a thing, because this happens almost every year. You had one like this about 4 or 5 years back. And when the richest place in the world is not prepared enough, what can we expect at other places? So the first thing we understand is natural disasters are increasingly more common now, particularly in types of fire and flooding, hurricane, and even river flooding. The second is that at almost all places, even our own homes, we are not prepared for disasters. We react after a disaster happens. Same is the case with here in Los Angeles. This is how it looks. The damages are about $150 billion, which is almost 1.5 times the budget of our country. Okay. So just just a county like Los Angeles loss is more than what our annual budget of the government of India is. And immediately all the insurance withdrew their policies of coverage because they have termed this as act of God. And obviously, even if the insurance companies pay money, they don't have that kind of money to pay. So this is the kind. And one thing you understand, not many are aware, that one of the reasons there was such a big loss for fire is you will see all the houses that have lost out, except maybe this and little of this alone, which has got saved. 99% of the houses which are lost they're built with wood. 95% of all houses in America is built with wood. So anything with fire is inviting trouble. In fact, few houses which are built with concrete had damage, but they were saved in a sense they didn't get burned down since it was built with concrete. So this is the kind of thing that we need to understand, okay? And this is not an isolated case. You see here, 2005, 2022, 2011, January 2025, September, all the way, continuous, almost every year from 1992, they have been having losses of 150, 180, 150 billion dollars, okay? And this is continuously in United States on the both on the West Coast and the Central. Not just that, fires alone in California, where we had this it, plenty. All the way from to 1991, more so you see here more frequently. 2020 in August, September, again in September, October, 23, 2018, 17, 18, 25. So post 2010, the number of such things all over the world has increased. One thing that attributes is due to global warming, where the average temperature is already high, and all you need is another 2 or 3 degrees centigrade to increase, and it becomes so dry that forest fires. Even now, even yesterday, day before, you had forest fire in Mysore itself on the Champani Hill. So it's quite common, but the only way to avoid is to get prepared for it. The other man-made disaster. It's so bad that this Russia-Ukraine war, you see, Russia and Ukraine are two countries with one of the world's largest food. The amount of wheat Russia and Ukraine grow can feed the whole world. In that stage, in fact, there's too much to eat in both the countries. And Russia, to top it all, has a very low population. They are spending all their money and human resources on killing each other. It has absolutely no basis other than a man-made poor thinking, okay? Now, what are the real ugliness, when I say the disasters not only is man-made, it has turned ugly because you now have explicitly private armies fighting each other, and you have soldiers from North Korea coming to Russia to fight against Ukraine. North Korea and Ukraine have no physical connection, no economic relation, nothing. It's exactly like Second World War. You see, in Second World War, Britain was fighting Germany, and Indians were fighting on behalf of Britain. 2 million Indians. 20 lakh people from India had gone to fight on behalf of Britain against Germany. We had nothing against Germany. We had nothing against England, which was ruling us. Okay. So what really was imagined to be a small 3-month war has now turned cross 3 years. Okay. So this is a perfect example of man-made disaster. Same is with Syria, you have noticed. Okay. And you can see here in Syria, all the people, Turkey, Russia, Iran, groups, now America, and Gulf Cooperation Council, another 6 countries. I mean, they are more involved in Syria than the Syrians themselves. This is the problem. And they have an indirect support to Al Qaeda, which USA opposes, but also funds them indirectly. Okay. So these are the kind of things that are happening, and you can see the consequences of such man-made disasters, apart from millions of civilian deaths. And it's also a very rich country. Syria has a much higher per capita than India. There's a problem. So this is typically the issue of my enemy's enemy is my friend for today. 11 years of civil war, backed by big two, that is Russia on one side, America on one side, and an idiotic another country like Iran. Okay. So it's basically a fight between Russia and America and Iran instigating people here. This is what it is. This is a perfect man-made disaster for 11 years. And now you have a change in government. One doesn't know how it. Anyways, all the resources are so badly depleted. This is really what it is. You have 6 or 7 people trying to run the country. So you can see how many people have died, etc., and how many refugees. One of the problems of man-made disasters is migration. Okay. So you'll see how many of the Syrians have migrated out. Okay. Another man-made disaster just about 10 days back. I mean, we've been having railways for 100 years. Now, why is it that we can't travel peacefully even in 21st century? These are the images of the platform on Delhi. Okay. And the stampede that resulted in deaths. This was on 15th February 2025. And 15 days before that, you had another man-made disaster on railways in Allahabad. Okay. So one clearly knows that we don't seem to learn. We are already finding it in formal education. Our students don't learn anything. They just pass the exam. Even most teachers who teach have not learned well. They have just managed to get into the profession. At least even after getting into the profession, one needs to invest time on learning properly. And this is a classic example. See, 10th February it happened, and 15th February this also happened. Okay. And you had a tunnel collapse last week in Telangana. This is a repeat of the type of tunnel collapses that happen very frequently. Okay. We'll come to that. Okay. So all of us are quite aware of natural disasters about which we can take precautionary measures. For example, in earthquake region, don't build houses with cement and concrete. Build with wood and bamboo, light material, right? Places close to the coast, and don't build anything in the shallow areas. Okay. And a big hurricane or a tsunami happens, there's very little anybody can do. Yeah. But forest fires and others can be controlled, if not eliminated, can be controlled Flooding can be limited, like what happened in Kerala a few years back. Okay. We also had this in 6, 7 years back in Joshimath. One of the reasons is the hilly region is all built like this. This will loosen the underlying soil, and it's already an earthquake-prone region. Landslides are very common. We also experienced it in Coorg about 7 years back. We are experiencing it quite common all over the hilly region these days. Okay. Of course, the world's worst man-made disaster was what all of us went through, unfortunately. This is what COVID resulted in. And now there is more proof that the COVID was actually done in the lab and it didn't come from wet market as it was claimed. So it was a bioengineered accident, man-made disaster of the worst kind humanity has ever seen, something that affected the whole world for little over 2.5 years, causing disruption to everything: life, education, occupation, mobility. So the distinction, whether it's natural or man-made disaster. Now, would you call this a natural? China wanted to put it as a natural disaster, saying it came from the wet market. But today we know it's increasingly known that it's a man-made disaster. And one of the people responsible for that is American government, which was funding it. Okay. So many times not clear, because man-made disasters start looking like natural. For example, what happened in Joshimath. Disaster area is much more than the Joshimath town limits. More so in rural China, COVID issue, new type of pneumonia that has started in 2023 after the COVID. Other non-Chinese estimates are 2 times to 4 times this. They are confirmed more than 1 million deaths by 2023. Cases of long COVID, lot of cardiac deaths in youngsters. Many of them who took vaccination. Vaccination helped immediately, but the long-term consequences are not known. So today, a lot of youngsters are dying with a cardiac, and one of the common thing with them is all those who have died young with cardiac problems seem to have taken the COVID vaccine. Okay. Loss of immunity. So again, you see about December 12th, 2023, Kerala reported 825 new COVID cases with 3 deaths. The question is, COVID, we have all taken vaccine. We seem to be defended against it, but we must also see that the vaccine power varies, slowly becomes less potent, and we don't know when we are vulnerable again, because COVID has not gone away from the world. We have just become immune to it, that's all. More recent is the Uttarakhand tunnel, very similar to what happened to Telangana. You can see even the images are very similar. Okay. Why is it that we don't, also the flooding in Chennai, this is also man-made. The flooding that happened in Bangalore is also man-made. So what is typically done? A disaster happens. You respond to the disaster, emergency. Then you start recovering from that. Then you have to mitigate. Then maybe you prepare, because the disaster happens again. If not at place X, at place Y. If not at a locality in the same city, maybe a different locality in the same city. Okay. So the question is, we are not prepared. We don't spend time or resources preparing. Therefore, when a disaster occurs, emergency response not necessarily adequate. Recovery predominantly is left to the individual or a group. Very less of mitigation. Absolutely no preparation. That's why every disaster, like our train disaster, happens. Every platform is a potential man-made disaster place, particularly in big urban places like perhaps the worst is Delhi, because Delhi is the place where least preparation is done. After all, it's a capital city, so you should not be preparing. Yeah, everything should be in order already. That's the assumption. Okay, so this is what is called a disaster or a risk management cycle. Where a disaster occurs, you respond, rehabilitate and recovery, takes measures for prevention and mitigation so that you are well prepared. And when the next disaster happens, you are more efficient way of dealing with it, with less damage to at least humans. Okay. And we have lot of categories of natural disasters. It could be geophysical, like earthquake, volcano, landslide or rockfall. Biological, we experience COVID. Meteorological, like tornadoes and other things, cyclone. Hydrological, like tsunami and flood, hailstorm. Climatological, heat wave, cold wave, drought, forest fire. All these are happening in India now. The summers are becoming more hot, and the winters are getting short but cold. And this forest fire in Los Angeles is caused by prolonged drought and increased heat. You also had it in Spain, you had it in Germany, you had it in Scandinavian countries. So the scale also matters. For example, not many are aware that one of the volcano eruption about 60,000 years back, called Toba explosion in Indonesia, almost killed more than 35% of the world population. It blocked the sun. The volcano exhausts soot and dust and smoke blocked the sunlight from falling to earth for about 2 years almost. And it was intense cold at large parts of the world. So a lot of them, animals and lot of humanity died. Almost 30% of the world population died in that about 70,000, 60, 70,000 called Toba explosion. So the scale, you had natural, man-made or technological disasters and natural disasters. The consequences of this could be food insecurity, epidemics and pandemics, and depleted population. So mainly natural due to flood and cyclone, cold wave, heat wave, etc. Man-made, fire, epidemics, deforestation, pollution, road accidents, train accidents. See, last week we had 2 plane accidents. One plane turned upside down in Canada because while landing, the wind was so high and it was ice, minus 30, 40 degrees centigrade. It slipped and turned upside down and felt lucky nobody died. Okay. So mainly man-made. Air crash, sinking ship, train accidents, building, bridge collapse, bomb blast, warfare, etc., etc. So the levels of impact of a disaster, lowest is most minimal disturbance, then one company or department or process impacted, multiple companies, department or process impacted, entire company location impacted, entire company location impacted during working hours, whole community impacted, whole country or world impacted. This was COVID. Whole community impacted was your Los Angeles fire, right? and you have various things. So the whole world impacted. We had one which is COVID in our lifetime. It has been there earlier and it will be there in future too. Lot of what is not mentioned is the time factor. I mean, you see, epidemic like biological thing, COVID started, but the impact was global for 4.5 years. Whereas this earthquake, volcano, and other things, the time factor is very limited. The impact is severe, but mostly local and for a short duration. Flooding is the same is this. Whereas climate and all, progressively, this global warming is a fact, and you can expect more and more hot summers, very shorter and shorter winter seasons. You can experience it now. In fact, the number of times we have used the blanket today, this season in Mysore was maybe 1 week or 10 days. We used to have winter for about 2 months. We now have winter which needs a blanket only for about 10-15 days. So what is missing? What is missing in all this is, you can see we have very little control over wind, water, and earth, even though we can be cautious, but we don't have control over it. Whereas here, all the things that we do here is under our control, yet we make sure so many things happen. And it happens repeatedly, which means there is no learning in these things. And sometimes it's difficult to learn because the cost of development vis-a-vis the cost of protection, this is almost opposite of each other. You want to conserve and protect, it almost says that you are not developing anymore. Okay. Development today simply means roads, buildings, highways, etc., etc. Development doesn't mean humans live better. That question is not even asked because it's very uncomfortable to answer that. So this is it. There is the disaster management has two components. One is the crisis management, other is risk management. Crisis management is when the actual act happens. That is, a disaster happens and you assess, respond, recovery. But the preparedness for a disaster is the risk management, where you spend more resources on mitigation and prevention, prediction and early warning. For example, after much repeated flooding, Hyderabad city has taken an action now where they have resurveyed everything, and all about 30 or 40 localities which were built on old lakes are now being shifted out. They have asked all the residents to shift out because they are going to demolish that and make the lake again. Same things have been done in Bangalore. Bangalore had about 17 lakes 50-60 years back. Bangalore had 17 lakes, including your Majestic bus stand and the railway station. Both were lakes. Today it's heart of the city, occupying the railway station and the Majestic bus stand. So almost all use, even in our own lifetime, we have seen one of the biggest lakes in Hassan converted to a layout. The new Hassan bus stand and layout against by the side of it was one of the biggest lakes in Hassan, completely made into a layout. This is going on everywhere. Every city has this problem. So maybe 20 years from now, they may ask all those people to get out, and because that's the only way to handle the water flooding. So does one disaster lead to another? What other disasters can natural disaster lead to? Any examples? For example, a natural disaster occurs, people lose the job. They are all laborers or contract workers, something like that. So their office is destroyed or their occupation is removed. So natural disaster can lead to economic disaster. Similarly, epidemic. That can all of you know how much problems we faced when we had COVID. We couldn't go out. Lot of people, all the daily wagers and people who sell every day, vegetable vendors, everybody lost their livelihood. Okay. Please note, relief from any disaster is always inadequate, insufficient, and in many cases improper. Don't think relief is. So if you lose 100 rupees, maximum the government will give is 30, which means 70 rupees is lost, 70% is lost. And it's not necessarily correct. You have lost a building or a housing, they will give you money. Where will you sleep for the night then? So most of the time, disaster is a big loss, immediate loss, long-term loss. And what was COVID-19, you can see, okay? Particularly, we'll focus on education because what COVID-19 led to in education is break in learning, both the style and intensity, leading to poor learning. That's why you had many mark sheet where the university declared it as COVID years, which means assessment was not done properly because teaching couldn't be done properly and the exams were not monitored well, so on and so forth. So there was very poor assessment. Consequently, poorer and reduced motivation. That's why when COVID batch students came to college or COVID batch students came out of college and joined occupation, they had absolutely no working skill. Many cases, one case I know particularly because it happened to my student's wife. She did her MS in the COVID years and she was supposed to do surgery, but because she was a postgraduate intern, they put her on COVID duty for almost 1.5 years. That is the time she should have learned her surgery skills. But she got a surgery degree, MS, without any surgical skills because she was put on COVID duty during that time. So this is really what is happening. And it was also reduced compensation for teachers. Many colleges, in fact, almost majority of the private colleges started giving 50, best was giving 50%. Many were giving between 25 and 30% of the salary and much less value for students. Loss of career in numerous cases, definitely loss of progress, loss of reading, writing and arithmetic skills, which are very noticeable. It has now reached alarming levels. Majority of the college students now are very poor in reading, writing and arithmetic. There was pressure on infrastructure, debatable diversion of precious resources, accentuating already existing inequality and inequity. Manikantan. Morning. I'll do it in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, right? I received the link. I'm in another session now. Okay. Yeah. Oh. See, already students and children, teachers also, they already have tremendous amount of inequality socio-culturally and inequity in terms of resources. That became, for example, I know many of my students who had 2 children and they had only one mobile. How can you buy a high-end mobile for the second child? So when the senior girl only took the mobile, the younger one missed a lot of classes. So this was becoming a serious problem. And in fact, I know many parents Both of them gave their mobile to the children, and they didn't have a mobile for connectivity during daytime. I know that. So there were a lot of induced problems, and there's a permanent distortion, call it distortion or convenience, shift in attitude by all. Everybody now, even after COVID, want to do online, like this online that is going on now. Online education is not education. Online education has only two categories. One, during emergency. Second, as a supplement. It is not a substitute to classroom education. Now today, everybody, all teachers now do PPT. Even if there is a board, they do PPT because they have prepared PPT during COVID time. And very easy to flash the PPT and read. Very easy to print the PPT and give it as a notes. There is very little learning that's happening. You can see various reasons for students dropping out. The gray is male and the red is female. Not interested. Financial constraints, particularly unable to get a mobile or whatever it is. Okay. Engaged in domestic activity, more of women. Engaged in economic activity, more of male. Geographically, school is far off. Unable to cope up with studies and failure in studies, whatever it is. Predominantly male. Yeah. These are the students in the age group 18 to 24. So what can you do? Predominantly boys and girls, significant percentage are engaged in economic activity. Now, can you combine economic activity with actual learning so that those who want to drop out also stay in the class? Which means you need a scheme like earn while you learn. It's a very important scheme. Very important. Unless you do earn while you learn scheme in India, you are not going to get the marginalized, economically marginalized group ever to take up education seriously. Okay. Which also relates with the financial constraints. Okay. We'll come to that later. And you can see there is tremendous disparity. They force people to have internet while during COVID time. And you can see households with internet facility, rural area only 14, urban 42, which means 58% of urbans also were not able to get connected. And almost significantly 85% of rural people were not able to get connected. Okay. So various percentages, and it's very bad in Jammu and Kashmir, 3.5%, Bihar 2.7%, Andhra Pradesh 1.5%. Kerala is better. Odisha is even worse. Okay. Karnataka rural listing 2 and 8.3, 22 and 35. Okay. So urban areas. So basically what the government said was urban area people will have better chance of education during COVID rather than rural. Okay. This is what our education system. You see here, people are entering in. The politician and management is very happy. The teacher is wondering what's going on. So the teacher knows what's going on. Students come very happy with lot of aspirations. So the first thing that goes out of the education system is intelligence, then discipline, then creativity. When all the three are removed, they are declared as pass and given a degree and sent out. This is typically our education system, and in COVID time, it made it worse. In fact, students coming out are hardly intelligent. They're extremely indisciplined. All their creativity is lost. This is it, see. Everything that is wrong with India's education system. You put all books, pencil, everything into it, and somebody collects a lot of money. Nothing happens. Even here, you see, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb the tree. So he's asking a bird, a monkey, a penguin, elephant, a fish, seal, and dog to climb the tree. That's a common exam. This is really what is happening now, particularly the NEET and JEE type of system. You have a factory which produces people who can answer known and similar questions. Otherwise, most of them cannot even tie their shoelace or wear their dress properly. This is it, you see here. Highly energetic people come in, they come out like completely losing confidence and like zombies. So, a nice quotation from Einstein. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. This is really what is happening. This is really what is happening. And we don't assess people for what they are capable of and make them excellent in that. We want everybody to be excellent in answering a question that I ask or it is set in the question paper. So, what is education? The capacity to learn is a gift, the ability to learn is a skill, and the willingness to learn is a choice. This is very important. We are forcing people to learn what they don't like, what they don't mean. Teachers open the door, but you must enter by yourself. Teacher cannot force you to learn. And more important, the roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet. This is very, very important. Now you see this year Karnataka has removed the 10 or 20 mark grace marks for class 12. They were giving, I think, 10 marks grace marks for first exam and 20 marks grace marks for supplementary exam. So you had people who got 15 out of 100 coming to college. I'm not saying that they are bad. They are not interested in that education or that type of education. So if they are not interested, they are also good humans. They are also talented. They are resourceful. Why don't you find a mechanism to make them useful for themselves and to the society? Why do you force them to come to a college when they are not interested? This has been the problem. Okay. Did we get this as teachers? And are we giving this as teachers? A well-educated mind will always have more questions than answers. Do you ask questions? More important, were you asking questions when you were students? And do your students ask questions? Education is the best friend. An educated person is respected. Education beats the beauty and youth. Chanakya statement. A man who does not read the book has no advantage over the one who cannot read. This is what is happening. How many of you as teachers read books now? You may read some magazine and other things. But how many of you read good books and improve yourself so that you can improve your students? Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. That's Nelson Mandela. This is it. Just see, isn't this a very realistic portrayal of what is going on? I'm not saying that teachers are irresponsible, but by and large, teachers have a relatively easier time compared to the student. And the most profitable people are the ones who are running the university. Okay. And it's really a burden for student to go through 3 or 4 or 5 years and get very little out of it. Another problem with government being very irresponsible about education, the private lobby seems to have overtaken. And one of the big disadvantage of private lobby is that it is unaffordable. Today, there are primary schools in Bangalore which have an annual fees of 3 lakhs. What are they teaching for 3 lakhs? I don't understand. Okay. So what's happening? Private school enrollment is increasing. The school infrastructure is getting better. Student people, teacher ratio and student classroom ratio is declining. Learning levels are declining. Regional trends are minimum. Girls and boys enrollment are steady. So general large-scale Indian education is a perfect disaster, man-made, just that nobody talks about it. This is where did we go wrong? See, we went wrong long back and we continued with that. For example, when we got independence in 1947, it was only in 1968 that we had a national education policy. From 1947 to 1968, 21 years. Nobody bothered what kind of education to give, how to give, etc., etc. And after that, it was only almost another 20 years when they woke up and said, what is it that we are doing? Can we change? After that, another 24 years, another 14 years before the policy change. In very good administered countries, education policy is changed every 3 to 5 years. In fact, they are changed dramatically. You may have heard Sweden was the first country to introduce computers to primary and high school. This is about 10, 11 years back. First country to introduce computers compulsory for primary and middle school, high school, everywhere. And just 6 months back, they passed a bill in the parliament banning computers and mobile to school children up to college. They spent $109 million printing textbooks, physical textbooks, and giving it to every student, saying you read from the book, stop using the mobile and iPad and screen. So there is no screen in Sweden now till class 10. You have to pass class 10, only then use mobile and screen. They are the people who continuously change depending on the situation. After the COVID, when mobile became a part of the anatomy of humans, they realized how damaging it is. We have not done anything. In fact, ideally, we should ban screen-based work up to class 10 for students in India. We don't. Only when a disaster occurs, we will try to do something. And you can also see, when you have very poor quality skill and education, you will see 90% of the cardiac deaths are due to poor skilling. Similarly, neonatal deaths, road injuries, all this, okay? So it's very important that proper skilling is done for every occupation, okay? More uncomfortable question. What is the implications of online learning? It is profitable, no doubt about that. It is very profitable to do online education. But is it useful? What components are most or least affected? What percentage of learning, online learning achieves? Does it achieve 25%, 50, 75, 100? In fact, at best it is 25, less than that. How do you plan the curriculum for this variation? Look back and see how we achieve. Skill, information and knowledge is what is to be imparted. Correspondingly, attitude, perception and learnability. So you had COVID-19 where became the most profitable industry in India. You had all these things, VTU vid, AICT vid, UGC vid, everything is a virus. Let's be very clear. IIT vid, NIT vid, UGC vid, another virus. So many things are told. So many disasters are created. For example, last week, about 900 people who are assessing NAC have been removed. 7 have been arrested. People knew NAC, NBA, all big fraud is going on for years. Now it's a disaster. Only when a disaster occurs, they take some steps. Now, what about placement, tuition, internship? All these have become another crisis. More importantly, what are the expectations of students when they come in? And what do we deliver when they go out? We also talk of interdisciplinary, entrepreneurship, excellence, all that. Nothing. All colleges and universities are particularly universities, absolute junk there. You can only admit children for time pass. You can't admit them for learning. Okay. So let's see all this later. Okay. So there are a lot of things to do. The interesting things of Bloom's taxonomy. Where does all this go? How much of interdisciplinary outlook will you develop? Because NEP is insisting on that. At the outcome level, where do our students go? In fact, I find a lot of students in postgraduate, even PhD, spending time preparing to write police constable exam. So in fact, majority of the postgraduate students even in IITs don't come there to learn. They come there to prepare for civil service exams. Air-conditioned library, all the material is there, food is there in the hostel, room is there in the hostel. So come and spend time. Same thing happening in Gangotri everywhere. Okay. Where we have been misled. In-person learning, which is both synchronous and asynchronous, that is inside the classroom and outside. Blended learning, where it's a mixture of in-person and online. Distance learning, which is completely online. And a crisis distant learning, where we gave learning classroom through the mobile. Now you see here, this is what we should be doing. We have now converted this to this. Online engagement it is. Not even distance learning. Online engagement. Online engagement is now a replacement for in-person learning. So, online learning at best is a supplement, not a substitute. COVID-19 has not only exposed poor quality healthcare system the world over, more so in India, but also accentuated an already failing education system. It has brought out all the fracture lines which have been glossed over since our independence. From independence, our education has been very badly planned, even worse executed, and hardly monitored. We are all the products of that. Okay. Like in most disasters, we save ourselves first and start looking to rebuild other secondary factors like livelihoods. Now we have to do this. Education is in very bad shape, and the only people who can repair it, let me tell you, are teachers. Will the college repair the education system? No. Will the university? No, definitely not. Will UGC and other bodies too? Definitely not, because they are the ones who are introducing wrong things. The only people who can change this are teachers, individual teachers. And that will be more or less the... And do not neglect native intelligence. For example, when the Uttarakhand tunnel collapsed, They couldn't recover like now. They couldn't push the disaster relief team to come out, but they got hold of traditional people who do illegal mining. They're called the rat hole miners. They actually ended up saving the Uttarakhand people who were trapped in the tunnel. Even today, yesterday, in the Telangana tunnel collapse, these rat hole miners have been called from Delhi to go and try whether they can save 6 people who are trapped inside, which means a lot of traditional and native intelligence which should be part of our education. We have neglected that, and they were particularly, see, a group of 6 rat hole miners flown from Uttar Pradesh did the job after high-end American machinery failed. Crores of rupees. That machine is about 20 or 22 crores. It did not work, but these people work. So one of the reasons we are doing this is the NEP will not give you answer, but it is a beginning to change a completely outdated, irrelevant, and a very false education system that we have